day one, we slowly emerged each of the numbers. Sometimes we can have them emerge simply by putting a text box over it and slowly revealing it. We would also work on repetition and maintaining a beat as we're saying the numbers out loud. Another thing we can sometimes do on day one is include things like shapes and try to guess what the smiley face is before we reveal it. So day one, that had all happened, and I'm going to jump into day two of a 4-day week where I'm going to change the routine each day. So we're here, it's day two, and I'm welcoming the students, and now I'm going to ask you, what patterns do you see within the grid that we did choral counting with yesterday? Go ahead and raise a hand if you see a pattern and you'd like to tell us about what you saw. Kelly, go ahead and start us off.
I'm noticing that each column, the ones place is staying the same. So in the first column, the 2 is in the ones place and that's staying the same. And then the 4, there's a 4 in the ones place and that's staying the same. And now that I'm actually talking about that, the beginning of each column is the digit in the ones place. The first row, the first number in each column is also the ones place moving down the entire column.
So, Kelly, can you stick with one column for just a minute and make sure that I understand what you mean by the ones place, because I do want to capture your words.
Sure.
Oops. Hold on, I'll get that back. And if you do make a mistake, you can just hit Control Z and that will undo the mistake. All right, go ahead.
So for example, in that first column, so I'm looking at the 2, and I'm noticing that as you move down the column, there's a 2 in the ones place every single time.
Ah, so I'm thinking that you're noticing that too. Is that right?
Yes.
And Kelly, did I type your notes? It says there is a 2 in the ones place in the whole column. Would that be what you were saying?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you for sharing, Kelly. Marianne, go ahead. And you're welcome to use the little black arrow to help you out if you want to point to something.
I can't do that because I'm sort of having trouble with Blackboard. But what I did notice is if you look at the diagonal, if you move from the upper left-hand corner downward towards the right, the numbers increase by 12. And if you go in the opposite direction, starting in the upper right-hand corner, going down towards the left, they decrease by 12.
All right, Marianne, let me make sure I get your wording. So the orange arrow shows increase.
Increase by 12. I'm sorry. If you go in the upper right-hand down towards the left, I'm sorry, I'm looking at, I literally am having so much trouble seeing this.
That's okay.
They change by 8. There's a difference of 8. I apologize. So they're increasing by 8.
Whoa, that's a neat pattern there. So I'm hearing this increasing by 8. And go ahead and raise your hand if you see another pattern that you would like to share. Who else sees a pattern? Sonia, go ahead.
Hi, so each row is 10 more than the row above it, so 12 is 10 more than 2. And just keeps moving that way.
Neat. So each row is a plus 10 to go down?
Yes.
And the way you said that, it makes me think of that's happening for each of these numbers as we go across. Am I modeling that how you're describing?
Yeah, exactly.
else? And now I'm going to do a slightly different modeling here. I'm going to ask my whole class to raise their hand. I'm automatically going to make the positive assumption that every child sees a pattern here. And the norm is going to change slightly to once somebody has said your pattern, that you can lower your hand and put a happy face in the chat box. That's your way of being like, I connect with you here. And so that way I see all these hands raised. There's lots of positive ready to present, but you don't feel sad that someone else said your way because you're going to put an emoji in the chat box. So Jennifer, go ahead and tell us the pattern you see.
I see that as you go across a row, you go up by 2 digits. 32 plus 2 is 34, 2 more is 36, 2 more is 38, 2 more is 40.
So you're going to add 2 as you go in each row. Is there anything you would like to change about what I wrote? I said add 2 as you go in each row.
I think it's as you go across each square in each row.
Wonderful. And we'll take one more. Go ahead, Katie.
I noticed in the far right column, everything ends in a 0.
Oh, everything ends in a 0. Lovely. All right, so that would be the end of day 1. And we're going to move into, or excuse me, that's the end of day 2. So day 1 was all about repetition and keeping the beat. Day 2 was exploring some different patterns that we saw. And day 3, I'm going to set up some mystery numbers. The way I'm going to do that is putting boxes on top of particular numbers. I'm looking for ones that could be figured out using a pattern. Whoopsies. There we go. So I purposely want the students to be able to say like the purple pattern, the yellow pattern, things like that. There we go. And then I'm going to click on all of these boxes and I'm going to send them to the back. That's a way that you can do an ordering. And it sends it behind all of these cool little patterns that we've already identified. So we're going to do a similar thing as we did earlier. This is now day 3. And I want students to see if they can figure out what the mystery box is. But not only that, I want them to use the other students' actual wording. So for example, you might say, I know this number is 21 because I used the red outline example and restate it. This is being recorded, yes. So I'll go ahead and ask again. You can raise your hand. If someone else has said your response, you're welcome to put your hand down. Christy, which blank do you want to tell us about?
I would go, I'm going to go into the one that's under the 8.
Awesome.
And I know that it is 18 because each row is 10 more.
I love the way that you used this strategy. Each one is 10 more. Lovely, and there we go. Jennifer, go ahead. Which one are you going to talk about?
I'm going to do the box under the 2. It's 12 because of two rules. There's a 2 in the ones place in the whole column, and each row is 10 more.
Whoa, so Jennifer used the red rule and the red outline rule in order to get this. I see that there's a couple people who found that same one. Feel free to also type in the notes how you see evidence of student voice. Lynn, go ahead.
I will do the one that is next to or to the right of the number 32. And I am talking about Jennifer Rose's rule around adding 2 as you go across. So that would be 34.
Nice job using the blue rule. I think maybe we could have used some other rules there too. So at this point, I might even open it up. Did anyone use a different rule? Stephanie, go ahead.
I'm going to go with the box in the bottom right of the, and say that that is 60. And I know that because each, well, 2 reasons. Each row is 10 more than the one above, and also everything in this column ends in a 0.
I love the way that you use their words. I think exactly. Way to go. And Lindsay, you've got the last one. Take it away.
Okay, so I saw the number underneath 28, and I use the darker orange rule where you increase by 12 on the diagonal. And so I went from 26 and then increased by 12 to get 38 on that diagonal.
Very cool. All right, folks, I'm going to jump right in to day 4. So the students have had some time to work on these. I'm going to do a duplicate of this slide because I really don't want to lose all the amazing information. I am going to now hide the rules that were stated before, and I'm still going to put in some of these boxes on very specific areas so that they can think about the rules that they had last time, and then I might even hide them in the back. And I'll do one more. I'm just going to call on 2 people so we can see how this is used. But your goal is to try to remember somebody's rule and try to think about what that was and why it fits here. Can I get 2 volunteers to raise their hand and try to remember that other peers' rule? Sarah, go ahead.
Okay, I am going to say the one below 30, and I know that's 40 because of that purple rule that everything in that column ends in a 0.
Wonderful job remembering our rule. And we'll do one more. Cecilia, which one would you like to do?
Hi, I will do the one below 4 using that darker orange rule. So I know diagonally we add 12, so 2 plus 12 is 14.
Wonderful. All right, folks, so that's a 4-day how I would use choral counting, and specifically as a math coach, how I'm going to engage a group of teachers in this activity. I asked you all throughout when you saw evidence of student voice, and then I might go in a little bit further and talk about how student voice is important here and why we want our students to be the ones that are up front and center. Take a moment and reflect on that activity that we just did. And as a coach, what's something you want to remember about that? Feel free to put it in the chat box or raise your hand and we can hear a couple out loud. What's important to remember about this activity as a coach? Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, something I really like about this activity is you use the same slide 4 times in a row, showing that it can be used multiple different ways and to build student understanding and thinking, which I think would be really helpful for teachers saying, hey, I don't need to keep recreating things, but I can be using the same slide and be getting so much student interaction and thinking out of it. So I really like that about this.
Oh yeah, we got to think smarter and not harder when it comes to online learning. Absolutely. So now not only are you just saying that, but you can provide teachers with that and get them to, milk it for all it's worth. Let's see, Kelly, go ahead.
I just think this idea of honoring student voice, and you were always, did I say that right? Is that what you meant? Is this what you meant? And like really just not only honoring it what it's originally stated, but instead of asking students like, what did I say yesterday, or use what I said, it was like, no, we're going to use what each other said. And I think that sometimes there's a perception that because we're digital and we're virtual, that it's going to be a lot more teacher-led than teacher-facilitated and student-led. And I think that this is just a perfect example of how it doesn't have to look like this. In fact, maybe student voice has never been more important than it is right now.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, Kelly, that student voice right now is so important. Um, let's see. Nasheen, you mentioned multiple ways to share. How did you experience that, and why might that be important to note as a math coach?
I just think it appeals to all the different kinds of learners. So if I'm maybe a little reluctant to share out loud, I have that opportunity of the chat. I have it through emoji, and it just is scaffolded to the kind of learner that I might be.
Absolutely. So I have a rising second grader and a rising third grader. And I can tell you that over this time, there were so many times that the chat box was turned off because the kids were just using emojis. So that made me wonder, like, how do we leverage that? They want to do it anyways. Like, how do we get student voice in that? And it's through these activities where instead of feeling like, oh man, they said my thing, all of a sudden it's, woohoo, I get to do an emoji. And not only that, but they get to do it multiple times. So what does that mean? It means they're listening in, which is what we want them to do anyway. So be sneaky with those emojis and milk them for all it's worth. Awesome. All right, this template is available for you. You can structure it to include coins if you're working on that. You can structure it to include fractions. You can structure it to include growing patterns, repeating patterns. It's definitely something that can be used even up through Algebra 1 when you are looking at functions and the way that functions are changing. So I hope that that's something that you can continue to use, everyone.